LSU, Orgeron is very confident in this team. He thinks Joe Brady coming over from the Saints is going to really help them. They actually asked him from the media, Coach, are you really going to run a spread offense? And he said, well, it's in the playbook, so we're going to do it if it's in the playbook. So they like Joe Burrow and what he's come into. They said he's going to run more. Mark, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. This league used to have Joe Burrow running the ball more, but for him to be a dual threat quarterback, I get that. Also, want to mention about Alabama how Saban, for all his criticism, can frankly be pretty candid at times. And I don't think this was so much a shot at Clemson as much as it was his own staff and players. He was obviously asked about the Clemson game and what did they learn from that. And his comment was, we had some coaches who were more interested in padding their resumes and looking at their next job, and some other players who were more interested in going to the NFL, and they didn't have the focus that we wanted them to have. He thinks that this team is much more focused, that he loves the coaching staff, that's what he's got. So you can always get some pretty candid out of Saban. So I thought his comments about that, and then the confidence of Ed Orgeron with his new offense, if we can put it that way, were two other things that stuck out in my mind too.
So I'm getting a bit tired of the Alabama narrative when they fail, which I'll put that into context. We both know what an Alabama failure is. It just means you didn't win the national championship, because this certainly was talked about following the kick six and the loss to Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl in 13, the loss to Ohio State in 14, not so much when they lost to Clemson on the last play of the game, or virtually the last play of the game in 16, but when they seemed to get manhandled or beaten down. And then again, this offseason, because of the Clemson 28-point win, that it's not Alabama losing because of any kind of deficiency. It's because they were distracted, either the players or the coaches.
Well, I think they realize now, if they're candid, to give Clemson credit. And the other thing is, the Alabama coaches did a really poor job in that game. But the reality is, the Clemson coaches, because of their continuity, had a really good game plan. They carried that through. So I think in fairness, look, I get the problems Alabama had, but you cannot escape what Clemson was able to do in their game plan, and frankly be able to carry through. Now again, the media all think this is going to be another Clemson Alabama renewal, and I think that's the thing that we're seeing here along that line again. So. But again, I mean, you see some fascinating things coming, Mark, out of the league right now. You see some real optimism that Florida is going to make a difference in this league. I'm not going to say they're going to upset Georgia this year, but there are some beat writers who pick Florida to win this year because they could see some issues with Georgia. And the other team, Mark, that people are very wary of is Texas A&M. They feel that Jimbo is going to be building somewhat of a dynasty over the next few years when he gets his recruits in. I mean, look, they go to Clemson this year, and they got Alabama and Auburn at home. It may not be this year, but there are a lot of people, Mark, that think A&M starting next year is very well maybe Alabama's biggest challenge.
I would be right there with them in regards to trying to weigh the challenger to Alabama being LSU or Texas A&M. And it kind of leads me to my last point before we know you need to run. We both love this game. The entertainment value on the field is remarkable. The prestige, the pageantry, and the tradition is unmatched in sports in many ways. What I don't like, and it's no fault of the teams that are dominating, not just in the SEC or nationally, because that's Alabama, Clemson, but in the 4 of the 5 major conferences, basically for 5 years, they've been locked down.
Yes.
Ohio State owns the
Yes.
Big Ten. Clemson owns the ACC.
Right.
Alabama owns the SEC, and Oklahoma owns the Big 12.
Right.
And we're looking for that next team that can possibly challenge those. And in the SEC, it seems to be pretty clear. It's like a 2-step process.
Yeah.
Georgia's as good as Alabama, but can they get over the hump? They're on the roster, they're as talented and obviously have played them toe to toe. And then within these separate divisions, it's can Florida challenge Georgia, and can LSU or Texas A&M challenge Alabama?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's what's going to make the league extremely interesting. Now, to follow up on your point, and this is more hall talk again, because people are tired of the same old teams, but yet when those same old teams aren't playing well, we're wishing the Blue Bloods were playing and doing, i.e. Southern Cal, and some teams like that right now. But I think what we're hearing more of, and Bill Hancock was there, and we understand the approach that he takes, and we love Bill, but here's the thing, Mark, that I think there's an underlying push to expand the playoffs, maybe even before the contracts are over. And I'm frankly a big proponent of this because of just what you said. We need more accessibility. That these conferences need to be able to have a chance to get representatives into the playoffs. Now, I know that the devil is in the details, and it's still going to be likely the middle of next decade when all of this comes to fruition and they're redoing the contracts with TV. Listen, you don't snap your fingers and these things fall into place, as you well know. There's going to take a lot of work to do this. But the point of this is they don't know what shape it's going to be. Could it be go to 6 teams? Could it go to 8 teams? I don't see it going any more than that because it would mess with the integrity of the game. I think if you got beyond 8, but I think what you're hearing is exactly the frustration you just mentioned, is people are getting tired of not having representatives in there, and that there's more talk and discussion that will lead to some differences coming up over the next few years to be sure that we may still have Alabama and Clemson, Mark, but the point is, if we add a couple of teams at least, that way we've got some other teams who may have a chance to be in this thing in the end, more so than what we've got now.
And in watching Jim Delaney, the outgoing conference commissioner there with the Big Ten, and arguably with Greg Sankey, the most powerful man in college football, 80% of the questions that he was asked centered on the college football playoff. And you have what is right now, based on all the metrics, the most or the second most. The two that we talk about, the SEC and the Big Ten, are so far removed from the other 3 in regards to money at the gate, rear ends in the seats, TV ratings, everything else, that they've separated themselves. And it's been that way for a long time. But basically, how can you stand to be in a playoff was the continual question, just framed in different ways.
Yeah.
Basically, what are you going to do about your champion being left out? Actually, 3 consecutive years, but the league being left out 2 consecutive years.
Yes. There's no question about that. That's something a lot of these commissioners are looking at. And the point we're getting is there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, Mark, than just what we're hearing from Bill Hancock and the commissioners. And that's important. And Mark, let me also say, we covered the ACC pretty heavily down here with Florida State, Miami being as close as they are. A lot of talk this week, not only with the ACC meetings, the media meetings themselves, but about the ACC network. The ACC network comes into vogue on August 22nd. And with your television expertise, you can appreciate all that's going on with that. Now, the big thing now is coming out is from the ACC representatives is, folks, if your cable system does not provide this, we want you to bombard them and let them know that you want the new ACC network. So that Mark, that fascinates me. I'm fascinated to see, along with the SEC and the Big Ten, how they do it, what they do, how they're going to be doing it differently